Welcome to another 3-minute video from MathWiz flashcards. Today's topic, rational equations when the linear terms are squared. This is part 3 of 4 parts. We've seen before, a rational equation is 2 parts, a numerator and a denominator. When the numerator is 0, we get roots. When the denominator is 0, we get asymptotes. When we pass the root of a linear term, the sign of y changes from negative to positive or positive to negative. When we pass an asymptote of a linear term, again, the sign of y changes from negative to positive or positive to negative. However, when we pass the root of a linear term squared, the sign of y does not change. If it was negative, it stays negative. If it was positive, it stays positive. Also, when we pass the asymptote of a linear term squared, the sign of y does not change. Negative stays negative when we pick up our pencil and move across the asymptote, or positive to positive again. Okay, here's a rational equation, nothing special. 2 roots on the top, an asymptote on the bottom. Here's what the graph would look like. Our next rational equation, the numerator is squared. We do get a root at 1, but we'll see that the sign does not change. It was positive coming into that root, and it remains positive as we pass it. The asymptote is regular. Here's another example. The asymptote is squared. The roots are regular. When we reach the asymptote, the sign had been positive. It remains positive after we pick up our pencil and move across that asymptote. Here's another example. Single root when x is 3, and asymptote when x is 1. However, that asymptote linear term is squared. So as we approach the asymptote from the left, the sign was negative. We pick up our pencil, we cross the asymptote, the sign remains negative. Here's an example where we have a root at -1 and an asymptote when x is 0, and both of these terms are squared. That means when we approach the root from the left, the sign was negative. When we pass, it remains negative. Picking up our pencil, as we approach the asymptote, the sign was negative. It remains negative when we cross. You can practice more problems like these or other high school math problems by visiting MathWizFlashcards.com, making math easier.